This is the Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well podcast. I'm Lisa Salisbury, and this is episode 120, Root Causes of Slow Metabolism and Cravings with Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer. Dr. Hehmeyer is here with me today for a conversation on metabolism and cravings. She is passionate about guiding you in creating the health and vitality that transforms your experience of life and alters what is possible. Dr. H takes a root cause, natural medicine approach that marries heart and science, and I think you'll really see how she does that today. Before we go any farther, let me just apologize for my slightly croaky voice. I'm struggling with a chest cold of some sort this week, so I'm sorry my voice sounds a little off here in this intro as well as during the interview. Bear with me. Welcome to Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well, the podcast for women who want to lose weight but are tired of counting and calculating all the food. I'm your host, Lisa Salisbury. I'm a certified health and weight loss coach and life coach, and most importantly, a recovered chronic dieter. I'll teach you to figure out why you are eating when you aren't hungry instead of worrying so much about what you are eating. Welcome back to the Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well podcast. I'm delighted to have Dr. Jessie Hehmeyer here, Dr. H or Dr. Jessie, lots of names. So welcome to the podcast. We have a great conversation planned. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, let us know a little bit about what you do, and then we will get going.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's such a pleasure to be here with you and your community. And yes, I am Dr. H, Jessie Hehmeyer, and I practice heart-centered, data-driven functional medicine. And you might also call that heart-centered, data-driven natural medicine. And really, the people who I partner with, we are working together to solve health mysteries, to resolve longstanding conundrums, whether it's around weight or around hormones or around digestion or skin. And ultimately, through identifying the root cause, facilitate the body's healing. And to me, all of this work that we do is really in service of one thing. And that is people thriving and inspiring others to do the same. And I see our health and vitality as the foundation that makes that possible.
I love thinking about our healthcare system as helping us live better rather than just helping us avoid sickness. And of course, like our sort of quote unquote regular doctors are a little bit overwhelmed. Our primary care doctors is really the word. They're overwhelmed with, managing illness, of course. And so I love that you are in this space helping people to just live better, taking their health up to, a higher notch and to really just attack those niggling things, the kind of mysteries that we're just like, is there something wrong with me? Oh, yeah. I know there's something wrong, but no one can figure it out. So I'm glad we have people like you out there doing this work. So we are going to talk a little bit about metabolism today. So jumping into your work with some weight loss, probably some mysteries there for your clients, what is going on there. So one of the things that you are really expert at is slow metabolism and root cause of what's going on there. So can you tell us a little bit more about the top 3 root causes of a slow metabolism?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I will lead with, because if I don't say something about this, many of you listening will have like a big, what the heck in your mind, right? And so to speak to what the heck, right? You'll hear that in these top 3 most commonly overlooked causes of slow metabolism, you will hear the absence of the thyroid. The thyroid will not be mentioned.
Okay.
And I want to say a little bit more about why that is, because, it is very true when I'm working with someone who comes to me and says, listen, I'm doing everything I know to do and the scale is not budging. I don't feel great in my clothes. I don't feel great in my body. I just want to handle this, right? Of course, I'm going to thoroughly assess their thyroid. And by thoroughly, I mean more than just one number, which is the most typical way of assessing the thyroid. We're going to look at least five different things around thyroid health and function. And if the thyroid requires support, we are definitely going to make that happen, right?
Okay.
Sometimes it's natural, sometimes it is using prescriptions, but whatever the case is, we are going to make that happen. That being said, the reason why it's not on the top three overlooked, it's because even if it is handled, it's very rarely the solution.
Interesting.
So, absolutely, we need to support our thyroid. We need to have this foundation of metabolic health, which the thyroid provides. And it's hardly, I've honestly, Lisa, I've never seen it be the answer. In other words, I've never
Like
worked with
treat the
anyone.
thyroid and someone
Yeah,
drops the weight immediately.
exactly. I
Okay.
haven't seen it.
Okay.
I just haven't. So, yeah. So the top three most overly commonly overlooked reasons people have a slow metabolism is, firstly is elevated inflammation. And
Right.
this is actually number one on the list because it is number one.
Okay.
And sometimes I'll be working with people and they'll tell me, I feel inflamed. And I'll ask a little bit more about what do you mean by that? They'll say, oh, my joints hurt or my skin's red or I'm bloated or however they feel like that inflammation is showing up for them. But more often than not, inflammation is elevated with no obvious connection, right? No obvious sign, no obvious symptom.
So is there a blood test for that then?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
100%. Yes. So that is why we want to get the data, right? I call it data driven for a reason. So yes, we want to, if someone comes to me and they're struggling to lose weight, looking at inflammation is always going to be on my to-do list. And so we can do that in a variety of ways, but the two ways I most commonly test are through testing something called HSCRP. For people who like to know what acronyms mean, that
Mhm.
means high sensitivity C-reactive protein. And it's like a conductor of inflammation that the liver produces. So it's a master conductor. And if it's elevated, there is long-term chronic inflammation going on, assuming you're not sick or have an injury.
Okay.
That
Right.
HSCRP, we would call that acute inflammation. And that's an appropriate response. It's an appropriate response to healing. But for what we really care about is this long-term chronically elevated inflammation. When it's elevated, it's going to put your body into fat storage mode. It's
Mm.
just what it does. It slows down the metabolism. And, we can go into like the biological purpose of that. But really, you just want to know that elevated inflammation leads to a slow metabolism. And often I work with people who, when we find this as a key missing puzzle piece, it's almost like it's so interesting. Like, we'll start to do the work we need to do, nutrition, supplementation, lifestyle, to start to bring down that inflammation. And maybe they won't see the scale move. They won't see the scale move. They won't see the scale move for a few weeks, even though they are really doing all of the work to crack this inflammatory code. And then all of a sudden, boom,
Mm.
it's like if only we could just test, do an instant blood test. It's like we would see it coming
Mhm.
down in their
Yeah.
numbers.
Because I'm sure
But
it takes time to come down. You can't just be like, "Oh, there it is. Let's treat that immediately."
exactly. And different bodies require different amounts of time,
Mhm.
So, and we do always go back and retest, right? If inflammation is elevated, we're going to circle back and test it again after we do the work, beyond just seeing the scale move, but it's
Mhm.
definitely something we want to address in a very targeted manner. And just to
Mhm.
say a little bit more about that HSCRP in the way of where I like to see it, I like to see it under 1.5. So
Okay.
over 1.5, it's playing a role. Over, I would say 3.5, it's playing a pretty significant role. And then I mentioned another marker in the way of inflammation that I would look at, and that inflammatory marker is called homocysteine. And
Mm.
homocysteine, I like to see that between 6 and 8. So HSCRP under 1.5, homocysteine between 6 and 8.
Let
If
me
it's,
just interrupt you here,
yeah,
Jesse, for a second. I think this is a really good point when people are looking at their blood work, even if you don't have this specialty blood work, just kind of standard. Here, what she's saying is, I like to see it in these ranges. That's different than what a normal range is. There's a difference between optimal range and normal range. Normal range comes from a sample of the population and see what most people are at. And I would venture to say there is probably more inflammation in most people's blood today than 40 or 50 years ago. I don't know when blood marker standards were set, but just know that when you're looking at your blood work, if you are having someone who is a specialist in functional medicine, root cause, or just helping you be well, they're just looking for you to be at different numbers. So you could see these numbers on regular blood work and have your primary care physician say everything's normal, which could be true, right?
Absolutely. No, so well said. And a great thing to highlight. Lab normal is not the same as optimal.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's a far cry from it.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going with
Yeah.
those numbers.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, you totally got it right there. Yeah. So HSCRP, we like to see it under 1.5, almost cysteine between 6 and 8. Then, to turn our attention to the second most commonly overlooked cause of a slow metabolism, you're pointing to that lab range conversation. A difference between
Mhm.
optimal and lab normal is perfect for this one because it's suboptimal insulin sensitivity. And fasting insulin, when we have that done via just a simple blood test, there's a huge range for normal, right? Like lab normal, it depends on what lab you're looking at, can go up to 18, 20, even 22 is normal for some. I want to see that under 8.
Mhm.
If you're at 8, I'm starting to hear, I see a yellow flag there. It's a metabolic yellow flag that your body is starting to not hear the message of insulin as well, which then means your body's going to produce more insulin because it's really important to insulin that it be heard. Rightfully so. It has important things to say. But when that insulin starts to creep up, it's going to fundamentally slow your metabolism down. Because one of the things that insulin communicates to your body is you have been fed. Store the fuel, don't burn it. So when our insulin starts to increase, that is the metabolic impact. Store, 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 don't burn, burn, burn.
How does that relate to your hemoglobin A1C? Because that's a measure, I think, also of insulin.
It's related. So it is definitely in the same family that we
Okay.
would look at around diabetes or pre-diabetes. But it's sometimes can happen that insulin starts to go up before hemoglobin A1C, or the other number we would be looking at in this world would be fasting glucose, goes up.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like the canary in the coal mine.
Okay.
Once your insulin starts creeping up, then even if your hemoglobin A1C and your fasting glucose is normal, it's time. I mean, you want to get on it before then, but it's just a sign that metabolically speaking, you're not moving in the right direction. You're not moving in a direction you want to continue heading. And that's a great time to see it. If your insulin's at 8 or 9 or 12, it's like, okay, perfect timing. Let's get on this right now because it gets more and more difficult as it gets higher. You're
Yeah.
working like almost like against physiological inertia.
Mhm. Yeah, and again, and I don't mean to attack, primary care physicians, I actually love mine, so I don't mean to throw any shade there, but a lot of times they just can't do anything until you're clinical, and so they're just gonna wait until they'll tell you to address your diet and exercise, obviously, they're gonna tell you that, but they're not gonna do a lot of interventions as they're seeing it creep up until you actually have clinical prediabetes or diabetes.
Absolutely. And part of that is because, simply put, they don't have that tool in their toolkit, right?
Right.
It's actually not included in their medical training unless they went out of their way to get that medical training. It's not contained in standard medical training.
Yeah.
What people are taught the science, right? The very, very important of understanding physiology and disease pathology and anatomy. All these things are very important. And they are taught to treat using medication or surgeries. Those are the interventions,
Mhm.
right? So I think one thing that would be helpful is to remember that is the tool they have. And just
Yeah.
like you, I still go for my annual exam. I still go see my OB-GYN for my annual pap smear, right? I do all of
Right.
these things that I believe are really valid and important to assess
And
our health.
preventative, yeah,
Yeah,
preventative
exactly,
testing, those kinds of things,
exactly.
sure.
So it's not an either or conundrum.
Yeah.
It's really what we're looking at is who has the tool that would be useful for me in this moment. And
Yeah.
we're using that tool. We don't need to discard any tool in the toolkit. We want to use the right ones for the right moment.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. And number 3 on this?
Number 3 is, I like to call it detox pathways gunked up,
Mm,
detox pathways gunked up. And, to step back and say a little bit more about that, the word detoxification, right? It's very, very chic. And
mhm.
I often think that if we just like put it on a supplement, we're going to sell a lot because people
Yep.
like the word detox. I get it, right? But let's step back and talk a little bit about what it is. So our detoxification pathways or processes, they are designed to take toxins, which are naturally fat soluble. That means they get stored in fat, and turn those toxins into things that are water soluble. And why is that so important? Because we can't get fat soluble things mostly out of our body very well. Fat soluble things mostly get reabsorbed. But when we turn them into things that are water soluble, we can get rid of those toxins via our urine or our bowel movements in particular, our sweat and our breath to some extent, but mostly our urine and our bowel movements. So let's just start with like, okay, that is the process of detoxification, fat soluble to water soluble to kick it out of the body in our urine or our bowel movements. Now, what can happen over time is either we have more toxins going into our body than optimal, than those pathways can handle, or for a variety of reasons, those pathways might be a little slower. The processing plant might just not be working very well, or the exit routes not working very well. So it's kind of in, through, out, one of those 3 things. And usually it's a combination. So, how does that impact our metabolism? Well, when we talk about toxins, we commonly think about microplastics and heavy metals and pesticides, right?
Mhm.
And yes, it's true. Those are all toxins that go through that process. But so too do our hormones. So the hormones we produce inside our body naturally are estrogens in particular, but estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, right? All these things go through our detoxification processes as well. And also, if you are on the pill or taking hormone replacement therapy, those will go through also. But it's just to say that when our detox pathways aren't working at the speed we'd like them to, or they're a little overwhelmed, whatever the case may be, we're just not processing and getting rid of toxins at the rate we'd like to, it will have an impact on our metabolism. Oftentimes I think about that more in the hormonal way, but there can be a few different ways that impacts our metabolism.
How do you get your fat soluble into water soluble? Is that also something in the detox pathways?
Yeah, it's in the detox pathways. And so there are 2 phases of detoxification. Phase 1 is oxidation, phase 2 is conjugation. And both of those phases have different cofactors. So if someone is low in the nutrients required to run those processes,
Mm,
their detox pathways will be a little sluggish. So, or
okay.
even if, like phase 2, especially phase 1 a little bit, but phase 2 especially requires amino acids. What are amino acids? Building blocks of protein. So if someone is like eking away on 20 grams of protein per day, I'm like, oh, well, your detox pathways are just crying for your help.
Quick break here. With the holiday season around the corner, I have to share about a gift idea that brings comfort every single day. Cozy Earth's bamboo sheet set. These sheets are incredibly soft, breathable, and perfect for helping you or someone special get a silent night every night. It's like elevating your sleep to a whole new level of luxury. And as you know from my many, many sleep episodes, your sleep greatly affects your metabolism as well. Honestly, when I switched to these bamboo type sheets, it really helped with my temperature regulation. They are extremely breathable, so you'll actually sleep several degrees cooler. If you're looking for a gift that says you deserve the best, this is it. Plus, use my code Well with Lisa, all one word, at cozyearth.com to get 40% off. And if you get a post-purchase survey, please don't forget to mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on the Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well podcast. Give comfort this holiday season and make every night feel like an escape. That gives us a lot to think about with our metabolism. A lot of times we're just like, I'm old, right?
Yeah.
And there's usually other things going on. Typically, we see with scientific studies is we're not really seeing the dramatic decrease due to age in metabolism that was once thought and once just sort of blamed. It's actually very little due to age. Mostly due to age is what we have with some of our muscle wasting when we get quite a bit older.
Mhm.
So it's nice to just hear some root causes that are meaningful to, things in blood work and things that we can actually see that aren't just like, well, there's nothing I can do because the clock is ticking.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you pointed to that too, Lisa, because that's totally spot on. Yeah. Both of those in the way of our metabolism really remains fairly constant. There's a huge shift as well as, muscle. Yeah, that is more of a thing as we age.
Yeah. So, a lot of this with metabolism can also lead into cravings. Things may not really be serving us, and yet our bodies are really wanting them. We're just coming off, last night was Halloween. So, there's lots of treats around. We're entering in the holiday season. There's going to be a lot of different foods that our brain is telling us are scarce because we only get them at this time of year. That's going to ramp up your cravings. I talked about that last week on the podcast. By the way, don't believe it because a Reese's pumpkin is the same as a Reese's Christmas tree. It's just in a different package and it's available in the Easter season as well. So they're tricking you that these foods are scarce at the holiday time. But the truth is, our cravings are going to be ramped up a lot of times because we feel that scarcity. We feel that like, oh, these holiday foods are special or meaningful. And we want to eat the things that are meaningful and, in quantities that serve us. But then we just get the regular old cravings that we just don't know what to do with, right? So, what do you think is going on there? Why do you think people struggle with cravings outside of the holidays, maybe inside the holidays?
Yeah, totally, totally. Well, firstly, to just kind of talk about it as a high level thing, why do people struggle with cravings? One is they get on the blood sugar roller coaster and they don't know how to get off, right? And by that, I mean, when we eat something that is high in sugar or high in simple carbs, whether it's rice or potatoes or pasta or bread, all of those things have the same impact on our blood sugar. Our blood sugar goes up and it goes up high and it goes up quickly. And our body doesn't like that. So we talked about insulin before. One of insulin's many jobs is to come to the rescue, right? Our blood sugar goes up super duper high. Insulin's there to save the day. We produce that insulin. Insulin grabs that glucose by its sticky little hands and walks it over to a cell door and it knocks on the cell door and the cell door opens up and absorbs the glucose because our body doesn't like it when our blood sugar is super high. But the thing that happens is when our blood sugar shoots up super high and we produce that insulin to save the day, the next thing that happens is our blood sugar super low. And it's in that state that we tend to experience cravings. We tend to get grouchy. We tend to experience cravings. We have difficulty focusing. Those are the different symptoms of low blood sugar. And so that blood sugar roller coaster is really can be a tricky one for people to get off. And, if you hear yourself, if you as a listener hear yourself in this, what I would encourage you to practice is really to begin by, no matter what happened yesterday, starting each day by stabilizing your blood sugar. Just start there. Just start there. Don't try to be heroic. Just start by stabilizing your blood sugar out of the gate. How might you do that? Well, by really prioritizing proteins and nutrient dense fats, as well as some nutrient dense carbs, right? So something like 20 grams of protein at least, 10 grams of heart healthy fat, If you are bringing in some of those carbs, making sure they're teeming with nutrients, teeming with fiber. Berries is a great example of something that would check both those boxes. So, no matter what happened yesterday, how you can reset that blood sugar roller coaster right now is by starting your day with these protein, fat centric, nutrient dense carb options.
I love that idea. In fact, I have the dumbest name for it, but I've never come up with a better, but my clients know I just call that the very next bite strategy.
I love it.
No matter what you ate yesterday, even if you overate, usually I use this in response to an overeat. We don't need to spiral out of control for the rest of the weekend. We don't need to throw our hands up in the air and the might as well eats, right? Instead, it's just the very next bite is right on plan. And right on plan looks just like that. Something high in protein, prioritize the fiber, get your water in. Like it's not lack of knowledge, right? You know what serves your body best. I'm always saying, tap into your own wisdom. You know what feels good in your body. That's on plan. That's what I mean by right on plan. And so, yes, I love that reset in the morning. And the other part about that is I typically have a breakfast just like what you're describing. My favorite thing is a protein oatmeal that I make. So it's got lots of protein, has egg yolk, lots of good stuff in it. If I don't have that or something very similar, I had my kids all home, my adult kids all home for the weekend. They wanted sourdough waffles. Fine. I made sourdough waffles. No big deal. Um, that doesn't have as much protein, and I can feel it. I can feel during the day I'm hungrier, I'm cravier. I'm like when I don't start my day with something high fiber and high protein, it really does kind of throw me. And I do notice it. My daughter teases me. She's like, "How can you eat that same oatmeal every single day?" I'm like, "'Cause it serves me. It serves me so well."
Yeah. And I bet you really enjoy it
I
too.
do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love what you're encouraging, all of you listening out there, yes, tap into your wisdom. And also, like, you know, the high protein oatmeal, maybe you're like, oh, not my thing. That's fine. Come up with another solution, right? There
Totally.
are
Yeah.
there are other ways to skin the cat. And part of this journey is solving for yourself what works with the amount of time you're willing to give and your taste buds and your
Yeah.
checkbook, like all these things, right? We all have to figure these things out.
I have clients that like to pre-prep like egg casseroles or egg bites, and muffin. So they're like egg and turkey sausage and vegetables. That's awesome with a side of fruit or berries. So yeah, tons of
Yeah.
ideas out there. What's your favorite breakfast?
Well, so Monday through Friday, I love my smoothie. Yes, and I will typically do like kind of a combo of whey and collagen protein in
Mm.
there, berries, chia seeds, coconut, unsweetened coconut milk. That's kind of pretty
Yeah.
commonly my go-to. Sometimes I'll throw some greens in there or some greens powder, just playing around with it like that. Also, I do love eggs and avocado, just simple eggs and avocado for me. I'm like, oh, that goes a long way. On the weekends, it usually is eggs and avocado on, like
When you have a
kind
little
of
more
a,
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, this has been so great. I know that you like to talk about superpowers. So if you could give every listener one superpower that you think would transform their health, what would that be?
I would give everyone the superpower to be able to tap into what I like to call playing your best game right now. And it's very much, it's joined at the hip with your very next bite, right?
Okay.
And so I would expand it to other areas of your life as well, but asking yourself the question, what is the best game I'm able to play right now? And that could be I'm going to have two pieces of pizza instead of five. It could be, you know what? I'm going to take a pass on alcohol tonight. But on another night, maybe I'm going to have two instead of four, right? It could be I intended to get a full 45-minute workout in, and my work and my family needed me in a way I didn't anticipate. Now all I have is 10 minutes and I'm going to use them, right? Rather than I didn't get the 45, so forget it. I'm going to use the 10 that I have, right? So really just looking, my invitation is start to cultivate the superpower in yourself and begin to ask yourself, what is the best game I can play right now? And bring that with you throughout your day.
I love that. And I love that you're also incorporating like some grace there with, if I didn't get in 45 minutes, 10 is great too.
Mhm.
And I think that is so important not to just, again, not throw your hands up in the air. Might as well just sit on the couch instead kind of attitude. So that is perfect. So lovely. Okay. I would love for you to tell people how they can find you online. And I know you're in Switzerland a lot, so not exactly available in person.
I'm not available in person, but I like to say I am where you are, right? So all of my work is remote, and you can find me at wellempowered.com. And a few things you can do there. One is if you feel called to schedule a consultation, whether you're someone who might like to explore working together or you just like to connect and toss some things at me, please do. Whatever the case may be, it would be a pleasure to connect with you. Also at wellempowered.com/dare, you can sign up to receive our weekly dares where we dare you to take on a micro habit for the week
Mm.
and just simply notice what unfolds for you. And then you can also find me on Instagram at Well Empowered.
Perfect. We'll put all those links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. It's been such a treat to be here with you and your community.
Dr. Hehmeyer and I had such a great conversation. We just kept talking after I hit stop. And so I said, hey, let's record a little bonus. So if you want to hear about how to specifically address some of the inflammation you might be experiencing, grab that bonus audio. I asked her what are some of the steps that we can do to bring the inflammation down on our own if we're not able to get to a root cause practitioner. And she had some great ideas. The link to get that short bonus audio is in the show notes. I'm so glad you tuned in today. If today's insights resonated with you and you're ready to make lasting changes in your health journey, I'd love to help. Book a free coaching session with me to dive into personalized strategies for sustainable weight loss and a balanced relationship with food. You can schedule it at the link in the show notes. Remember, it's not just about the food, it's about empowering yourself with the choices that truly serve you. Have a great week, and as always, thanks for listening to the Eat Well, Think Well, Live Well podcast.